Unit 1, Functions and Inverses. This lesson is mostly a review over Algebra 1 concepts that you have learned. A relation where no x value is repeated is called a function. A test to see if a graph is a function is called a vertical line test. The set of all possible x values is the domain. The set of all possible y values is called the range. And remember, you can also use this little mnemonic to help you remember and keep domain and range separate. X, Y, check your ID at the door. I stands for independent. D stands for dependent. D stands for domain. And R is for range. Note, whenever you need to find out what the domain is, it lines up underneath the X. So domain are your X values. So is independent. If you need a range or dependent, it lines up with Y. So therefore you know that range is with the Y values. Where the graph crosses the x-axis is called the x-intercept. These are also known as zeros or roots. Where the graph crosses the y-axis is called the y-intercept. When two halves of a graph match, you have symmetry. Types of symmetry: you have x-axis symmetry, y-axis symmetry, y equals x symmetry, and origin symmetry. The highest point on a graph is called the maximum. The low point on a graph or valley is called the minimum. So these are the vocabulary words that you will need in this unit to help you be successful. Now let's use our knowledge of the vocabulary words to look at our graph. Let's put arrows on the end to denote that this is a graph that's continually going up. Remember, the domain is the set of all x values. So let's put an x right here for domain. Remember, x values go left and right. So when I'm looking at domain, I want to know all the possible x values, what's happening left and right. Let's look at our quadrants. This side of the graph is in quadrant 2. The signs for this quadrant are negative infinity for x and positive infinity for y. On this side, the graph is in the first quadrant and it's positive infinity to positive infinity for x and y. So for the domain, I want to see what is happening to all the x's. Well, the x's are going from negative infinity to positive infinity. This is all real numbers. You can use this symbol to denote all real numbers. Let's look at the range. The range is going from positive infinity, but I need a stopping point. The range is going up and down. So the high point of the graph is positive infinity. The low point of the graph is right here at negative 9. So the range is all the values greater than negative 9 because the graph is going up. and it's greater than or equal to -9 because this is a solid dot. Remember, open dots are not equal to, and closed dots are equal to. Next concept on our list is the x-intercept. Remember from our directions, the x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. The graph crosses the x-axis in two locations. At -1, and we write that as an ordered pair, -1, 0, and at 5, and this is written 5, 0 as an ordered pair. Now let's look at the y-intercept. Where does the graph cross the y-axis? Well, the graph crosses the y-axis right here at this point, which is -5. So we would write that as an ordered pair, 0, -5. Let's find the place where our graph is symmetric. Remember, symmetry is when the two halves of the graph match on both sides. You see right here that the graph is split evenly on both sides, and this line is at x equals 2. The maximum is the highest point on the graph. We don't have a high point on this graph, so it's none. And the minimum is the lowest point on the graph. And the lowest point on the graph, 2, -9.